Hi, as Sophia read such a beautiful story on her blog, I've decided that I'll read one of my son's very favourite stories from when they were little boys. It's called The Whale's Song by Diane Sheldon, and the pictures are by Gary Blythe. It's a beautiful story. Lily's grandmother told her a story. Once upon a time, she said, the ocean was filled with whales. They were as big as the hills. They were as peaceful as the moon. They were the most wondrous creatures you could ever imagine. Lily climbed onto her grandmother's lap. I used to sit at the end of the jetty and listen for the whales, said Lily's grandmother. Sometimes I'd sit there all day and all night. Then, all of a sudden, I'd see them coming from miles away. They were moving through the water as if they were dancing. That's Lily and her grandmother. But how did they know you were there, Grandma? Asked Lily. How would they find you? Lily's grandmother smiled. Oh, you had to bring them something special, a perfect shell or a beautiful stone. And if they liked you, the whales would take your gift and give you something in return. What would they give you, Grandma? Asked Lily. What did you get from the whales? Lily's grandmother sighed. Once or twice, she whispered, once or twice I heard them sing. Lily's Uncle Frederick stomped into the room. You're nothing but a daft old fool, he snapped. Whales were important for their meat and for their bones and for their blubber. If you have to tell Lily something, then tell her something useful. Don't fill her head with nonsense. Singing whales, indeed. There were whales for millions of years before there were ships or cities or even cavemen, continued Lily's grandmother. People used to say they were magical. People used to eat them and boil them down for oil, grumbled Lily's Uncle Frederick, and he turned his back and stomped out into the garden. Lily dreamt about whales. In her dream she saw them, as large as mountains and bluer than the sky. In her dreams she heard them singing, their voices like the wind. In her dreams they leapt from the water and called her name. Next morning Lily went down to the ocean. She went where no one fished or swam or sailed their boats. She walked to the end of the old jetty. The water was empty and still, and out of her pocket she took a yellow flower and dropped it into the water. This is for you, she called into the air. Lily sat at the end of the jetty and waited. She waited all morning and all afternoon. Then, as dusk began to fall, Uncle Frederick came down from the hill after her. Enough of this foolishness, he said. Come home. I'll not have you dreaming your life away. That night, Lily woke suddenly. The room was bright with moonlight. She sat up and listened. The house was quiet. Lily climbed out of bed and went to the window. She could hear something in the distance, on the far side of the hill. She raced down to the shore. Her heart was pounding as she reached the sea. There, enormous in the ocean, were the whales. They leapt and jumped and spun across the moon. Their singing filled up the night. Lily saw her yellow flower floating on the spray. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. Suddenly Lily felt the breeze rustle her nightdress and the cold nip at her toes. She shivered and rubbed her eyes. Then it seemed the ocean was still again, and the night was black and silent. Lily thought she must have been dreaming. She stood up and turned for home. Then from far, far away, on the breath of the wind, she heard, "Lily, Lily." The whales were calling her name. That's the end of the story. You can see why it's such a beautiful, moving story. I love that. Bye.